Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires. Christopher got in touch with me after picking up a hard copy of The World Below. Thank you very much, Christopher. To request a video. This is something all of you can do. You can reach out via MatthewDawkins.com, ask for a video of your choice. If you've picked up a copy of The World Below in hard cover through RPG or ordering on BackerKit, I will make a video of your choice. So, there may be certain restrictions. I've had some strange requests over the last couple of years, but this one's a fine one, so thanks very much, Christopher. He wanted to know if I had any techniques for running a Vampire the Masquerade city with a lot of complexity, such as London pre-Mithras, the Parisian court of Villon, without making prep work a full-time job or artificially restricting the story to certain parts of the setting. Can things be done with downtimes, revealing only between sessions? Can something be done with floating secrets? What sort of techniques would I recommend to simulate a higher level of complexity than I can render, or you can render, at a moment's notice? Well, we should talk craft here rather than canon, and I'm going to do it honestly because I know that people like you, fans of Vampire the Masquerade, enjoy the game because it is gloriously, ruinously baroque. The central storyteller problem of high politics vampire is how do I make a city feel vast, ancient, and alive without either burning out or railroading the table into a single alleyway of relevance. London under Mithras, Villon's Paris, Constantinople before it fell. These cities work in fiction because they imply far more than they ever show. And your task as storyteller is not to simulate a city in its full fidelity, it's to maintain the illusion of total complexity while only actively running a fraction of it. The good news is this is quite possible, it's a solvable problem, and the bad news is it requires unlearning some very common prep habits. Breaking it down. The core lie that you must tell and believe is that no table can perceive more than 10, 15 at a big push active political elements at once. Not players, not storytellers, not even obsessive Sabbat archivists. The mistake people make when running complex cities is assuming complexity comes from quantity. It doesn't. It comes from interdependence and latency. What do I mean by those two words? Well, a city feels complex when actions have delayed consequences. When NPCs act when player characters aren't present. Information that players may receive will be partial, contradictory, sometimes late, and power can be exercised indirectly. What you don't need is dozens of statted NPCs, complete maps of every domain, exhaustive faction trees, unless it really helps you plan, but I don't recommend any of those things. I certainly never use them. You need systems that generate believable motion off-screen. Think not simulation. Think less simulation and more of a pressure cooker environment. There is potentially a lot going on. And to imply that there's a lot going on, that's where you have your Elysium scenes, your courtroom scenes, your Sabbat retie, where rumours can spread of, did you hear what happened over here? Where's this vampire? Oh, he was destroyed. These things don't always need to be related to the player characters. They shouldn't always feel the onus to investigate every single thing they hear. But if they pick up on a plot thread and decide to follow it, that's how you start expanding your chronicle. You basically become player-led, depending on what bait they go for. The city should be a set of moving pressures. Stop thinking of the city as locations and think of it more as tensions, is what I would recommend when preparing a complex city. Instead of the Tremere Chantry, the Toreador Court, or the Nosferatu Warrens, define 5, 7 political pressures currently active in the city. Succession anxiety, for example, resource scarcity, ideological schisms. About the same number of actors, so characters who respond to multiple pressures, and 5 to 7 unknowns that the players cannot fully see yet. These are not factions in a war game sense, they are vectors for your plot. So, for example, in a Parisian court, the pressure might be Villon's aging authority. More and more young vampires are arriving in Paris and disrespecting the prince due to his age, how out of touch he is. There may be a second pressure. Mortal revolutionary sentiment is bleeding upward through the kindred. Another pressure, here's your third, artistic patronage as political currency. Maybe Vion favours one artist over another, and therefore there's some clans who back one artist over another. Fourth, foreign elders circle the court like sharks. These don't have to be non-French. They could be from Orléans. They could be from Burgundy. They could be from, hell, any part of France, basically. People who have been looking at Paris as a jewel they wish to claim. And finally, the Masquerade growing fragile among salons. Let's say that is our court and the 5 pressures currently pressing down on it. Now, every single NPC, scene, and rumour you introduce plugs into several of these at once. This is how you get density without sprawl. So you have a contact, Cainite or otherwise, who is both an artistic patron but also a foreign elder and is critical of Villon's aging authority. All of a sudden, you've got someone who ties into multiple plots at once. And it doesn't always have to be a character. This could be an event that occurs as well that ties into all of these things. And each one could have a peripheral 2 or 3 characters pecking at the edges, piranha-like, but they don't have to be central. Keeping that 5 to 7 number in mind is a good one, because anything more than that, and again, players will start getting lost and losing interest. In terms of Downtime as the engine of complexity, I think Christopher's absolutely right to zero in on it. Downtime shouldn't just be bookkeeping, it's where the city lives. It's where the NPCs act rather than the players. The key shift is this. It's not what the players do, it's what the city does in response. So players, for example, could declare 1 to 3 intentions. Think of it like a Pendragon Winter phase, for example. Cultivating influence, investigate a rumour, undermine a rival, secure feeding rights, shore up a relationship, embrace a new vampire. If you don't want that sort of thing on camera, you can suggest to the players that these are activities they can pursue in Downtime, and the repercussions from which can then appear in play. You resolve these quickly, often abstractly, and then you ask who noticed, who benefited, and who was inconvenienced. This is where complexity can blossom without becoming a quagmire. Then you can reveal Downtime actions between sessions. For example, can keep your prep lightweight if you are only just announcing the repercussions between sessions. It lets players sit with consequences. It makes the city feel like it acts and reacts independently. Email, shared documents, short in-character notes, these are all gold ways of addressing Downtime. Importantly, don't reveal everything. Reveal public outcomes, rumours, contradictory reports. Let players enter the next session already reacting. I've ran far too many Vampire the Masquerade games and played in far too many where at the very start the players are kind of looking at each other thinking, well, what do I do next? Waiting for the storyteller to tell us. Okay, so here's where you go. If between sessions the storyteller has asked you, you can do any number of these 10 options, such as the ones I've just availed of you, and you each come back, as you would probably in a lot of ongoing live-action roleplay, and just before the session, let's say the day before, the storyteller provides you, each player, with what the immediate outcomes were to your minor actions. Then, at the very start of the game, you are likely to want to respond to some of those responses. And Downtime doesn't need to be symmetrical. In fact, I would encourage different information going to different players. Not secrets for their own sake, but this is perspective. A Ventru hears about resource shifts. The Toreador hears about social slight. The Nosferatu hears about disappearances. Suddenly the table itself becomes part of the city's information economy. You don't have to prep more for this. You redistributed what you already had. Hopefully, all of this should tie into your existing plot, your existing chronicle. This only works if you have a chronicle framework in mind, if you know where you want your plot to go, because you can use Downtime to funnel characters in a direction without ever making the game feel linear. It just means it picks up speed and doesn't get entrenched in all of the complexity that can come with a big city plot. Floating secrets, as the Lazy Dungeon Master recommends, are compatible with Vampire. I'd say, in fact, they are tailor-made. But it does need refinement. Secrets should be political, not factual. Avoid secrets like NPC X is secretly a Bali. Prefer secrets like someone is undermining the prince's feeding compact. A Methuselah's name has resurfaced in private correspondence. A blood bond was broken recently, but no one is admitting to it. These are situational truths, not plot twists. And they can attach to an NPC, a location, any rumour source, as long as they organically become true. Now, the crucial addition to the floating secret is, if a floating secret isn't revealed within 2-3 sessions, it evolves. The mutation of the floating secret. Or you could call it the decay. Maybe someone else exploits it first. So if a character doesn't act on a floating secret that you introduce between sessions or in sessions, then it needs to change, and the players at some point, again, either during downtime or during the session, need to hear about that change or witness it. So someone else exploits it first, it becomes distorted, it stops being relevant. This keeps your prep fresh and prevents secret hoarding. There's no point establishing a plot at the very beginning of your chronicle that characters are never going to go back to. You need it to change or die on the vine. Complexity, in my view, thrives on expiration dates, having a clock running in the background. And this does not make games harder to run. Far from it. It means you are pushed along just as much as the players should be. Falling idle is the great death of any role-playing game where the players don't know what to do next with their characters. The same applies to a storyteller. If you run out of ideas, it's time to hang up. But if you have evolving plots going on in the background that aren't contingent on the players, not only can you keep yourself entertained, but you can keep the players surprised. The illusion of a vast cast is really the greatest trick you can pull. You want a city that feels like Lyon's Paris, endless salons, endless faces, endless grudges, endless masks. You don't need endless NPCs. The masks are actually one of the best ways to do it, whether at tabletop or live-action roleplay. If every single Elysium people are required to wear costume, literally perform a masquerade, then ultimately the characters in the background of that Elysium don't matter as much. You're not going to have some character there saying, "Who can I get a list of all the character names here?" because everyone's wearing a disguise. Define by function rather than biography is my advice here. The prince's current favourite, the keeper who is quietly overreaching, the harpy who trades in absolution, the elder who never attends Elysium but everyone quotes. Only give full personalities to those who intersect with the player characters. Others remain latent, ready to solidify when needed. And again, these characters' roles should change over time. Just because we are often told Vampire the Masquerade is a game of sort of static, vampires never change with age, that is a lovely thing to read, but it's not terribly interesting in play. If the same vampire is doing the same thing every single Elysium, well, today's favourite courtier is tomorrow's exile in a game with complexity. Today's antagonist becomes tomorrow's ally. A background NPC suddenly matters because context changed. But change is the operative word here. And this is whether you're playing Vampire the Masquerade, The World Below, Curseborn, or anything else. Things need to be moving. You, as a GM, don't need to be concerned with writing essays about these things. It's just if someone started up a plot, as mentioned, and players don't get involved in it, have that plot come to a conclusion or explode and suddenly center it. Let consequences, however, lag on purpose. You see, one of the greatest mistakes, I think, in running political games is immediate payoff. Real power structures respond slowly and then brutally. Delayed consequences are significant. They feel significant. Minor actions cause minor immediate effects and major later ones. You know, it's the old butterfly effect. It's the ripples in a pond that cause a tidal wave. Consequences manifest through intermediaries. If you are doing something to destabilize the prince, it shouldn't be the prince who comes hammering down on you. It should be the prince's servitors. First of all, the mortals, then the ghouls, then the childer. Then we might actually see some elders get involved. Players should hear about repercussions before they feel them. It is again a way of making a city feel bigger, more seismic, than if you just have everyone in court talking to each other at all times about what's going on. That is not interesting. Feeling change is far more interesting than hearing about it verbatim. So as an example, a player character insults a toreador at court. Session 1, nothing happens. Session 2, a door is politely closed in their face when they want to get somewhere. Now, they may bypass it in gameplay, but the door was closed. Session 3, a feeding route is contested. You're not sure by whom, but you've heard about it in court. By Session 5, a rival suddenly has excellent information on the character's activities because this toreador has deployed spies after sabotaging you, sending you to feed somewhere else, and all of a sudden you're a Masquerade breach. Players will learn that the city remembers. And again, it's not adding complexity, you're stretching it out over time. Imposing restrictions without railroading can feel difficult. You explicitly want to avoid restricting play to one corner of the city, Christopher. That is a good instinct, in my view. The trick is soft focus. Rotate the spotlight rather than the map. You don't need to present all domains at once. Almost every rookie storyteller I have ever encountered that has screwed up a Vampire the Masquerade game has wanted to present the entire city, has given the players an essay saying, this is the vampire who controls this bit, this is the vampire who controls this bit, they've got a rivalry, this is this. They're not going to remember. They're not going to care. 1 player in 10 will find this Bible fascinating. The other 9 are going to think, well, what do we do with this? So each session should highlight 1 to 2 political arenas. Other fade into background noise. They resurface later, changed. Players will feel freedom because everything still exists, but it's just not all in the frame. The players don't constantly need to be at the prince's beck and call. There are loads of vampires in the city, and there is nothing more dull than player characters constantly responding to the prince's demands and being the prince's dog's bodies. NPCs will come to the players when the players gain leverage based on their objectives, their achievements, when the players become useful, when they become dangerous. This pulls new parts of the city into relevance naturally. You want your prep to, you want it to scale. You don't want it to explode. Prep from week to week. All you want to do is update the pressures, what intensified, what eased. You want to advance 2 to 3 NPC agendas, resolve unused secrets, and prepare 1 to 2 scenes with no fixed outcome. That's all prep should look like, in my view. That's it. If you find yourself writing more than a page or 2, you are over-preparing. Complexity comes from iteration, not accumulation. I know this is starting to sound like a TED Talk, but I've got ideas on this. I've been running Vampire the Masquerade for a very, very long time. The final mental shift that is demanded of you storytellers, not just you, Christopher, but all of you storytellers, is to run a city like pre-Mithras London or Villons Paris. You must accept one thing. Your city is not a setting, but a process. It will contradict itself, it will surprise you, it will develop myths you never planned. That is not a failure. That is a process. It is a success. Players do not remember how many NPCs you named. They remember that things changed when they weren't looking. They will remember that power was never where it seemed. They will remember that City felt older and smarter than they were. And if you achieve that, you've already done more than most published sourcebooks will ever do. And best of all, you get to sleep. You don't have to work all night on your next session. So, I hope that this has been of assistance, not just to you, Christopher, but to anyone watching. If you've got your own advice on how to run a big city with lots of characters and loads of agendas and moving, spinning plates, I recommend putting them in the comments below. And as I said at the start of the video, if you want your own Vampire the Masquerade video, or indeed a video on any RPG, you should get in touch with me via MatthewDawkins.com after picking up a copy of The World Below, which is linked in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching. I will be seeing you next time.